Welcome back. Happy May 12th, 2021. Reforming the Republican Party, reclaiming the Republican Party, cleansing the Republican Party, burying the Republican Party. These are the headlines the mainstream media wants to dominate the political discussion right now. You see, after all, didn't Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and Joe Biden tell Americans for years that the Republican Party was a party of extremists or extreme ideas? That was the praise. By the way, sometimes something like half of us were or are deplorable. We cling to such anachronisms as Bibles and guns. We are in the states moving backwards, as Clinton, Obama, and Biden have all said. So now the wise have awoken, their slumber has been shaken, and they want to save the Republican Party from itself so that what? They can lose more if it becomes more popular? Or so that more likely it is ground to dust, thrown out of the arena of respectable repartee and politics, buried in the ground, plowed over with salt, poured on top. This is not new. It's not a new problem. It's not a new tactic. After all, 3 months into this revolutionary presidency, the Middle East, having been pacified, is now afire. 3 months into this revolutionary new presidency, the southern border, on its way to solidification, is now afire. 3 months into this new presidency, we have gas lines for the first time in nearly half a century. Oh, inflation and unemployment are on the rise as well. But the successes of the past 4 years must be so thoroughly traduced that its political party must be decimated, right? If you think that makes no sense, I show you the Times. Does anyone with a modicum of common sense or the ability to cogitate truly think a party leader that won the most amount of votes of any sitting president standing for re-election? Does anyone think that a party that can do that needs to radically transform itself? Does anyone with a modicum of common sense or the ability to cogitate truly think a party leader who could fill every stadium he went to, even amidst COVID, and could win record numbers of minorities, not to mention the votes of 74 million other people, should be sent to Coventry or washed out of the Archean stables? Thus we get to a New York Times article today titled, quote, "Over 100 Republicans, including former officials, threatened to split from the GOP," close quote. Now, guess who the group leader is? Oh, okay. First, yes, let's have a good laugh. That headline, over 100 Republicans, as if that number should be taken seriously in a party whose membership constitutes at least 1.5 million members in just Arizona. Now, guess who the group leader is, as I say. His name is Miles Taylor. I recognize maybe two other names listed in the article. Oh, you don't recall who Miles Taylor was or is. Really, it's a was. And it lasted about a day. He wrote that anonymous op-ed in the New York Times a few years back, saying he was a highly placed Trump administration official who, with others, were thwarting the president as part of their patriotic duty to save the country from his madness. He was described as a member of the senior staff at the White House. He turned out to be the chief of staff to the Secretary of Homeland Security, a position nobody would ever consider senior staff in a White House, a position nobody even knew really existed. He got a book. He got a gig at CNN, but he doesn't get America or the Republican Party, or at least not the conservative movement that is paid tribute to in fueling and animating the party. Which, of course, brings us to the story of Liz Cheney. I've not said much about it because I don't think much of it. You tell me who the last conference chair was of the Republican House caucus. You cannot. It matters little other than honorifically and in corralling votes. That said, don't let the media make this about something it's not. Just a couple of months ago, the GOP voted to leave Cheney in her position after she voted to impeach Donald Trump and was only one of about a dozen Republicans to do so. This is different, and it's not about Donald Trump, though she wants it to be and though the mainstream media want it to be. It's about her continuing to make her job about Donald Trump and continuing to lambaste the party when the job is to take on the opposition. When your own house is your enemy by your own declaration, you can't very well be expected to line up the members of that house as a unified caucus and bring others along to join it, can you? It was about partisan and political incompetence. Though don't get me wrong, the Democrats in the media would love an ineffective person in GOP leadership. Let's keep that in mind when they keep talking about why Liz Cheney should have stayed in her position. When the Democrats in the media want you to have a leader you don't want, the map and the ground are in disagreement, and thus the map is wrong. Well, then, of course, the party has moved so far right it's unrecognizable even to a Cheney. Let's drop a few pretenses, shall we? Dick Cheney is what made the family famous name. Lynn was great, but it was Dick that made the family name. Not too many chairmen of the National Endowments of the Humanities that are remembered. And Dick Cheney always, at least was always known as, until 2001, a moderate, from the moderate wing of the Republican Party. For goodness sakes, he was Gerald Ford's chief of staff and defense secretary to George H.W. Bush. But for the second Gulf War, Iraq, and the effort to turn him into Darth Vader, especially as President George W. Bush was termed out, he'd be as remembered as Dan Quayle and his son, who was a member of the House. Not too remembered, right? Perhaps because one was conservative and one really wasn't. In other words, the left was right to go after the Quayles because they were conservatives. The Cheney family, not so much. But to say Dick Cheney's signature issue, an issue and position backed by the likes of Christopher Hitchens, John McCain, and Joe Lieberman is the heart and soul of conservatism is just wrong. And the elements of the party that believed in regime change have become the true anachronisms. But still, we're told, nonetheless, the party is too extreme and right-wing. It needs cleansing of a divisive, race-baiting, science-denying ethos and set of representatives, spokespeople. You want to know what I say? Sorry, but you can choke on it. I'll accept the mantle of science denial when you tell me why you don't talk about the due date of your fetus when you are pregnant. Oh, you don't say fetus because everyone says baby? Don't tell me about science, life, and death. Don't tell me about denying science when it comes to our children's health or our public's mental health. You are the team, you are the side that ruined it. I'll accept the mantle of divisive when you explain to me just what in anything Newt Gingrich or Donald Trump or Rush Limbaugh or anyone on this channel ever said that was remotely close to related to what Adolf Hitler said or did. Find me a Republican who told a black audience their Democratic opponent wanted to put that black audience back in chains. Race baiting? I'll accept the mantle of race baiting when you explain to me how using a person's race to determine eligibility for anything and denying eligibility for anything based on race has any relationship to the Moral Dictionary's entry on equality or equity. I'll accept the mantle of race baiting when you explain to me how teaching children racial differences are meaningful has any relationship to the Moral Dictionary's entry on child rearing or even just plain old decency. So what of an ideology too far right of the country as they claim it? Is conservatism today right of its past? Of course it's not. Harry Jaffa once said the Goldwater campaign became respectable because of the election of Ronald Reagan. And what president or presidential candidate spoke more like Goldwater and Reagan and supported more of their agendas than anyone other than Donald Trump? For those who know their history, they know this to be true. Try it this way. The maiden issue of National Review in the 1950s proclaimed the conservative movement stood against four major trends: the growth of government, coexistence, William Buckley's word, with our enemies, intellectual liberal elitism, and United Nations and World Organization deference. I'm not sure Ronald Reagan spoke as much about all these things as much as Donald Trump did. This always had me curious as to why National Review could be so opposed to Donald Trump as it was. But it is the opposition that is out of sync with the history of modern conservative movements, and not today's Republican Party, as the mainstream media and the left describe and hate it. Why wouldn't you hate if you were a liberal or a leftist? Why wouldn't you hate a movement that has succeeded in concretizing and reifying William F. Buckley's original dreams, concerns, desiderata, and lifelong work? Dr. Jaffa once put it that one can sum up the Democratic Party as this: extremism is no vice if it is in the defense of an ever larger federal bureaucracy, racialism, invented rights, federally funded abortions, and aid to countries that burn the American flag, and organizations in America that burn the American flag too. Moderation is no virtue when attacking America. Thus, I think it is the media's and left's opposition to today's Republican Party and conservative movement that is out of sync with constitutionalism, common sense, and I'd still like to believe the vast majority of the American people. I may be wrong on that last point. As you know, I debate it internally and with you all here all the time. But if I am wrong and the conservative movement and Republican Party do not represent the vast majority of the American people, then no movement, if it remains dedicated to the Western ethos of reason and the principles of the Declaration of Independence, no movement or party dedicated to those things will ever be able to govern here or save this, the last best hope of Earth. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.